De Tech Talk wordt gestreamd volgens mij. Welkom allemaal op de Drupal Tech Talk. Voor wie is het de eerste keer dat hier op een Tech Talk is? 1, 2... Oh, best wat. Nou, dat is, zal ik een beetje wat vertellen over de Tech Talk. Het is een initiatief genomen door Triquanta. Ik ben van Triquanta en Hoppinger uit Rotterdam. Helaas is er niemand van Hoppinger vandaag aanwezig. Dus ik neem even de honneurs waar. Het is een reizend circus. Ongeveer 1 keer in 2, 3 maanden organiseren we een event, elke keer bij een andere Drupal shop in Nederland. Deze keer bij Synetic. Dank dat we het hier mogen houden en dat jullie de host willen zijn. De host verzorgt drankjes en pizza. We gaan om 7 uur pizza eten. Dat is volgens mij allemaal helemaal geregeld. Ja. Wat kan ik er meer over vertellen? Nou, het is, elke avond zijn er 2 sprekers over technische onderwerpen, gericht op developers. Lisa gaat zo eventjes wat over Synetic vertellen. Dan rest mij, denk ik, jullie een fijne avond te wensen. Ik zal aan het eind nog eventjes ook nog een keer een oproepje doen voor sprekers en locaties, want daar zijn we altijd naar op zoek. Denk ook tijdens deze sessies van, is er iets waar ik het een keer over zou willen hebben, laat mij vooral weten. Want we zijn altijd op zoek naar nieuwe sprekers.
Laten we straks even babbelen.
Wat zeg je?
Laten we straks even babbelen.
Ja, oké, super. Oké. Lisa,
Yes.
aan jou het woord.
Nou, welkom allemaal. Ik vind het echt super leuk dat jullie er allemaal zijn. Ik zie heel veel nieuwe gezichten hier. Waarschijnlijk heel veel van jullie zijn hier nog nooit bij Synetic geweest. Ik ga heel even kort wat vertellen. Synetic is een full-service Drupal internetbureau. We zijn in 2004 begonnen met 3 man. Inmiddels hebben we 4 scrum teams, onze eigen DevOps en onze eigen design. Maken websites voor klanten als Hogeschool Leeuwarden, PWN, onderdeel van Ziggo. Vanavond hebben we 2 sprekers. Onze eigen Mark gaat het hebben over clean code concepts in combinatie met Drupal 8. En Niels van der Molen is hier al.
Nee, hij is er nog niet.
Nee, hij is er nog niet.
Maar die gaat het hebben over distros.
Ja.
Ja, het gaat hebben over maintainability van Drupal 8.
Ja. Die verzorgt het tweede vraagje, dus als ik binnen dat kan hij aansluiten. Ik zal heel veel wat praktische dingen vertellen. We beginnen straks met Mark's praatje, daarna gaan we wat eten. En dan volgt het tweede praatje. Als jullie tussendoor naar de wc moeten, die zit in de gang links, waar jullie waarschijnlijk ook die jas hebben opgehangen. Als jullie tussendoor heel erg dorst hebben, ik zet wat drinken op de tafel hier achter neer en wat glazen erbij. En er staan gewoon wat hapjes. Maar we hebben ook gewoon dit moment tussendoor om te drinken. En achteraf gewoon een cerebral. Dus laten we beginnen.
Er was gevraagd om het in het Engels te doen. Ik weet niet of dat noodzakelijk is. Any non-native Dutch speakers? Nee? Nou, lijkt het niet op. Maar in het Nederlands misschien wat makkelijker. Nou, welkom. Mijn naam is Mark. Sinds april ben ik een van de senior developers hier bij Synetic. En sinds april doe ik ook Drupal. Ik ben 15 à 16 jaar bezig als developer. Ik heb van alles gedaan, studie van design, eigen custom frameworks. Dus mijn palet aan kennis is iets breder dan alleen Drupal. Mijn grootste ontwikkeling als developer is ontstaan nadat ik deze 2 boeken heb gelezen. De welbekende design patterns, zeg maar een beetje de bijbel over standaard oplossingen. En clean code, en dit was echt gewoon een eye-opener. Concepten die daarin voorkomen, is niet alleen PP, het is gewoon programmeertaal in het algemeen. Ik ben nu ook bezig met een interne serie van sessies, die heet dan Develop to Develop. En dan wordt dit eigenlijk behoorlijk lomp uitgespeeld. En de talk van nu is eigenlijk het comprimeren van 4 talks van 1 uur, waarschijnlijk in 1 uur. Dus het wordt een beetje als de Ramones, snel en hard. Dus laten we meteen beginnen. De eerste premisse waar ik van uitga. Het schrijven van code als developer is nooit je primaire taak. En dat is een klein beetje toelichten. Namelijk, het schrijven van code is eigenlijk alleen maar een technische implementatie van een oplossing. Als je dit dus vervolgens iets verder trekt, is de primaire taak van een developer het creëren van oplossingen. Mensen komen met problemen. Ik heb een website. En er komen straks een klein stukje probleemanalyse en abstractie uit. Maar het idee is dat je dus een solide en onderhoudbare, en daar zit nu de nadruk op, oplossing biedt voor hetgeen wat de klant vraagt. En clean code en design patterns zijn in mijn optiek een heel belangrijk onderdeel van. En soms is code helemaal niet de oplossing. Soms is het gewoon veel handiger om iemand in te huren die in Excel zit te hakken. Omdat dat een langdurig, misschien wel goedkoper beeld is dan ontwikkelen van een applicatie. Soms is het ook gewoon dit. Trying to create last-minute desperate solutions for impossible problems created by other fucking people. Oftewel, de hacks. Alright, wat gaan we doen? Het eerste blokje, en dat is in de eerste speech die ik intern gedaan heb, behoorlijk uitgebreid behandeld. En daar ga ik nu wat sneller doorheen. Ik hoop dat iedereen het kan volgen. Mocht hij het niet volgen, steek gerust je hand op. Abstractie. Hoe analyseer je problemen, hoe abstraheer je die? Vervolgens hebben we een kleine pointer over complexiteit. Wat is complexiteit? En dan gaat het vooral in dit geval over psychometric complexity. Design patterns en vervolgens wat voorbeelden over hoe je cleanere code opzet. Alright, abstractie. De klant heeft een probleem, namelijk een groot wit vierkant. En die wil 4 gelijke vlakken hebben. Dan ga je aan de gang en je trekt 2 lijntjes. Je hebt 4 gelijke vlakken. Probleem opgelost, klant blij. Maar helaas, de klant had dit verwacht. Dit is hetzelfde. Het zijn 4 gelijke vlakken. Maar deze 2 dingen zijn dus totaal niet met elkaar te verenigen. Hier hebben we dus nu een probleem. Of je begint opnieuw. Of je forceert de klant dit te gebruiken. Maar hier speelt ook een ander probleem. Namelijk, de definitie van 4 gelijke vlakken is zo vaag dat je überhaupt niet had moeten beginnen. En dan is dit een kleine schets van een willekeurig aantal voorbeeldjes dat ik getekend heb, wat voldoet aan de term 4 gelijke vlakken. En hier zit dus ook meteen een soort van addertje onder het gras verborgen. Vraag me af of iemand hem ziet.
Nee, wat is gelijk? Gelijk.
Juist, wat is gelijk? De laatste 2 zijn namelijk wel gelijk in oppervlakte, maar niet gelijk van vorm. Dus dit is echt een analyseprobleem. Je hebt blijkbaar het probleem wat gesteld is niet goed genoeg doorgrond. En kom je dus met een oplossing die dus totaal niet matcht met het verwachte resultaat. Oftewel, je moet altijd zorgen dat je exact weet wat iemand wil. Anders krijg je dus dit soort problemen. Nu heb ik in mijn originele talk dit stap voor stap uitgesplitst en de voorwaarden gesteld. En uiteindelijk was dit het resultaat. Dit is een abstractie van het originele probleem. We hebben namelijk hier gewoon een grid over het gebeuren heen gelegd. Waarbij we dus al de oplossingen die ik hiervoor had, kunnen aanbieden. En dit zou je kunnen zien als, stel dat het geheel de Drupal-applicatie is. Alle losse blokjes die zijn modules. En het enige wat je hoeft te veranderen om tot al die verschillende oplossingen te komen, is hoe die modules met elkaar communiceren. Ja, je bouwt je uitgaande van Drupal 8, je bouwt je service containers op een andere manier op, je doet je injection op een andere manier. En met dezelfde blokjes kun je dus alle oplossingen bouwen. Dat is in een abstracte vorm een manier om problemen uit elkaar te trekken. Eén groot probleem is moeilijk. Heel veel kleine probleempjes zijn makkelijk. En die hangen in elkaar en dan los je alsnog het grote probleem. Dan hebben we hier iets. Ik weet niet of iemand hier ooit van gehoord heeft. Inmiddels wel. Inmiddels wel. Ja, inderdaad. Psychometric complexity. Eigenlijk is dit een berekening over hoe complex is je code. En dit kun je dus ook gewoon over elk willekeurig code-based project laten runnen. Er is een tool beschikbaar via packages, dat heet PHP Metrics. Dat kan je installeren en dat kan je over elke willekeurige applicatie heen laten. laten halen. En dan krijg je gewoon een soort van set van HTML-pagina's. Oké, deze klas is te groot. Deze functie is te complex. Dit is het waarschijnlijke gemiddelde aantal bugs wat in je applicatie zit. Je kunt er allerlei hele handige metrieken uithalen.
Heb je dat toevallig al een keer geprobeerd voor Core?
Volgens mij is voor Drupal 8 op de site van ppmetrics zelf. Dus als je naar ppmetrics.com gaat, hebben ze van bijna alle pp-frameworks doen ze gewoon dagelijks een metriek uitdraaien. Iets anders wat ook heel handig is van hoe hard zijn je objecten aan elkaar gekoppeld. En dan zie je gewoon een soort van cirkeldiagram en je klikt op dateformat en je ziet allemaal lijntjes lopen naar alles wat erin hangt. En het is super interessant. Maar het idee is eigenlijk, je wilt je codeblokjes, methods of je classes, een zo laag mogelijke score willen laten halen op zo'n metriekbasis. De optimale score is 0, maar dat is zo goed als onhaalbaar. Onder de 10 is mooi. Boven de 10 moet je gaan nadenken. Dit blok is goed. Daar is de PP Store bereikt. Dat zijn mooie plugins voor PP Store. PP Mesh Detector kun je aanzetten en die geeft dan gewoon een oranje kringeltje onder je method name. De functie is blijkbaar waarschijnlijk te complex, want je hebt een score van 30. In ieder geval een interessante tool en belangrijk voor clean en stabiele applicaties. Dan komen we bij de design patterns. Ik weet niet wie daarbij bekend is. Alright. Eigenlijk zijn die design patterns gewoon een serie van standaard oplossingen. En die hebben allemaal namen. En die kun je, als je eenmaal een beetje kennis hebt van hoe die dingen werken, dan herken je al heel snel in je codepunten. Oh, hier moet ik dit patroon gaan toevoegen, want dan wordt mijn oplossing gewoon veel simpeler. De basis daarvoor is gelegd in dit boek. Er zijn kasten over volgeschreven. Ik heb er wel wat meerdere boeken over gelezen. Ik vind dit nog steeds de meest simpele uitleg. Dus vrij makkelijk te volgen. De voorbeelden zijn vaak in C, maar er zitten heel veel schemaatjes bij. Van oké, als je dit patroon gebruikt, hoe hang je je onderdelen in elkaar en hoe werkt het dan samen? Alright, nou ja, voor de Drupal 8 developers onder ons. De bovenste 3 zijn eigenlijk de meest belangrijke die je in mijn visie zou moeten kennen. Deze die gaan we straks in de voorbeelden wel tegenkomen. De factory, de strategy en de chains. Wie heeft er ooit al met de events gewerkt in Drupal 8? Nou, dat is een implementatie van het mediator pattern. Dus je hebt een applicatie, die gooit een event in de lucht en ergens is er een stukje code die luistert naar een event en die doet er iets mee. En die twee dingen hoeven helemaal niks met elkaar te maken hebben. Eigenlijk zou je in Drupal 8 de hooks, wat een soort van hele simpele versie van dit patroon is, moeten vergeten. En daar is een fantastische module voor en wij zijn hem ondertussen steeds meer aan het aanvullen. De hook Event Dispatcher is gewoon een Drupal 8 module en alle hooks, bijna alle hooks die bestaan, gooien gewoon een standaard event. En dan kun je ook inhaken. Dus je hoeft nooit meer hooks te maken. Je maakt gewoon een event listener, die hang je in je service container en dat is dus het volgende onderdeel, de version of control. En dan kun je dus allerlei dingen los laten executen. Je kunt dus, stel dat je, waar wij het voor gebruiken is voor mailnotificaties. Stel dat je 100.000 mensen moet mailen, wil je niet dat iemand in de frontend gaat zitten wachten tot die 100.000 mails verstuurd zijn. Je gooit een event in de lucht, hey, notify die mensen maar. Er wordt een item in de queue gezet en ergens door de grond in de achtergrond worden die mensen wel een keer gemaild. Een beetje dat mediator pattern. En de inversion of control is gewoon de container. Ik weet niet of mensen hem al kennen van Drupal 8. Service container. Zoek het op. Geniaal ding. En in Drupal 8 draait eigenlijk alles om die service container heen. En als je er wat meer over wil lezen, dit is een hele goede site. Sourcemaking.com. Die heeft een heel duidelijk overzicht van alle design patterns. En misschien nog belangrijker, een heel duidelijk overzicht van alle anti-patterns. De dingen die je niet zou moeten doen. Alright. Dit zijn 3 concepten waar ik even heel snel doorheen ga. Dry, solid en kiss. Ik weet niet of mensen die kennen. Okay. Dry is don't repeat yourself. Als je een stukje code 2 of 3 keer tegenkomt, ben je niet goed bezig. En is je abstractie blijkbaar niet goed genoeg om het te centraliseren. Dus de code zou in theorie maar 1 keer voor moeten komen. Ga je copy-pasten, ben je jezelf aan het herhalen. En dat is echt super lastig op het moment dat je dingen moet gaan wijzigen. Dan moet je overal in je codebase door gaan zoeken waar datzelfde stuk code zit. Dat moet je ook gaan aanpassen. En hier is een heel simpel voorbeeldje uit een format D. Die gaan we straks vaker zien. Maar dan kan je deze echt iets groter maken. Ja. Oh, wacht. Kom uit. Hoe werkt dat? Zo gaat het net. De format div. Ik vond dit een hele aparte functie, want die doet van alles behalve een div format. Maar dat is een hele andere discussie. Je ziet hier 2 keer voorkomen if options returns object, wat een verborgen boolean argument is. Return een format div en verderop in de code staat die nog een keer. Dit is dus een herhaling van code binnen dezelfde functie zelfs. Dit had heel makkelijk opgelost kunnen worden. Door te zeggen, ik heb een function die heet getFormatDateDiv met dezelfde argumenten. En die returnt een object op basis van de string die hij uit de originele functie terugkrijgt. Bijkomend voordeel, is dat je deze gekke options returns object ook niet meer nodig hebt. Dus die kan je ook meteen vergeten. Dus en je herhaling is weg. En er is een verborgen boolean argument verdwenen. Alright, solid. Dit is een beetje een lastig ding. Ik ga er snel doorheen. Maar eigenlijk betekent dit in korte termen, zorg dat er 1 ding ingaat en 1 ding uitgaat. Een functie doet 1 ding, punt. Op het moment dat hij meer dan 1 ding gaat doen, dan moet je het eigenlijk uit elkaar trekken. En dan weet je, dan kan je het ten eerste makkelijker testen. En je weet op basis van de naam wat het doet. Als je opeens onverwachte return types terugkrijgt, hoe zit dit nou in elkaar en waarom doen ze dit? De O betekent open for extension, closed for modification inderdaad. Oftewel, je mag dingen uitbreiden, maar niet wijzigen. Op het moment dat je interface staat, moet die blijven staan. Punt. En je kan een interface 2 nieuwe items aan toevoegen. Maar een bestaande interface, zeker als het gaat om die bijvoorbeeld Drupal.org staan, mag je dat binnen dezelfde semantic version nooit wijzigen. Als je het wel doet, maak dan een nieuwe versie aan. Want die mag wel backwards compatibility breken. Dus ga je van 1 naar 2, kan het. Blijf je binnen een 1 versie, mag je nooit je interface aanpassen.
Daar vraag je ook aan.
Ja.
Want als je dat een beetje vergelijkt met de vorige, de features zelf, daar is in principe een oplossing dat je zegt, we gaan een extra met toevoegen op de interface of op het object.
Ja.
Maar dan krijg je natuurlijk wel ook steeds meer problemen als je dat doorvoert met het onderhouden.
Ja, want als je inderdaad, als mensen de eerste zouden callen met het argument true, verwachten ze opeens een object wat er niet meer is. Dat klopt. Dus je zou dit binnen dezelfde versie niet moeten doen. Dit soort refactors. Sorry?
Ja, dus dat je bepaalde public methods gewoon internal markeert.
Ja, zou kunnen. Ik zou het gewoon naar een hogere versie en dan releasen. Dat is wat ik zou doen. Wat je ook kan doen is de ene laten staan binnen de huidige versie en de tweede toevoegen en pas in de volgende versie dat stukje er weer uithalen. En dan heb je het forward compatible opgezet.
Ja.
En de L, de laatste twee weet ik even niet uit mijn hoofd. En de L staat voor Liskov Substitution. En dat betekent dat eigenlijk elk onderdeel van je code moet je kunnen switchen met een andere variant van je implementatie. En dat komt eigenlijk neer op gebruik interfaces als typings. Oh, nou, graag.
De I staat voor Interface Segregation Principle.
Ja. Ja, als je methods niet gebruikt binnen een functie die wel in de interface staat, dan moet je twee interfaces maken die combineren.
Precies.
Ja.
D staat voor Dependency Inversion Principle.
Oh ja, dat is. Ja, dat komt
Waarmee
tegen.
eigenlijk beschreven
Ja.
design patterns.
Ah, dankjewel. Alright, hier hebben we het format div weer. Ik had het idee dat deze niet één ding doet. Ten eerste heeft hij twee verschillende types van returns, namelijk of een string of een object. En vervolgens gaat hij intern allerlei gekke dingen doen, namelijk en strings berekenen en maximum ages berekenen en de granularities resetten en nee, ik vond het lastig te volgen dit ding. Maar eigenlijk had dit veel simpeler moeten. Dit had gewoon een string moeten returnen, punt. En dan had het maar één ding gedaan en dan had je dit in onderdeel van die berekeningen en het formateren van die specifieke onderdelen had je eruit moeten trekken naar losse methods. En dan had je die los kunnen testen en dan had je geweten dat uiteindelijk het geheel gewoon had gewerkt. Nou, hier program to an interface. Dus op basis van een interface kun je implementatie altijd switchen, zolang ze aan dezelfde interface voldoen. En dat is bijvoorbeeld een beetje het entity manager en alle storages. Het maakt niet uit welke storage je krijgt. Je weet dat het een storage interface heeft. Dus je kunt er alles mee doen en je kunt dus in je code random wisselen tussen de storage die je nodig hebt.
Bijvoorbeeld een entity interface require in plaats van een specifieke entity.
Inderdaad. Of een account interface in plaats van een user.
En wat hierbij ook heel belangrijk is dat als een interface specificeert dat er een bepaald type argument wordt verwacht, of een bepaald type return value is, dat dat ook altijd zo is met jouw implementatie. Als jij een interface implementeert en die interface stelt er komt een boolean uit, dan mag je alleen een boolean. En integers, booleans.
Gelukkig krijg je in PP 7.1 fatals als je dat niet doet. Dus allemaal switchen. Het is sowieso een stuk sneller dan alles wat eronder zit. Maar in PP 7.1 kun je dus inderdaad return type hits hard maken. En op het moment dat je zegt dat het een string is en je return 0, krijg je gewoon een fatal. Bam. Had je maar een string moeten return.
Keihard.
Alright, kies. Keep it stupid and simple. Sommige mensen zeggen keep it simple, stupid. Klinkt iets negatiever. Maar dat is eigenlijk ook een heel simpel principe. Dit is een function die checkt of iets submitted is. Voor wat het doet, vind ik dit vrij complex. Namelijk, we zetten iSubmitted is 0, vervolgens zetten we iSubmitted met iets anders. Dus die eerste regel had sowieso niet hoeven bestaan. En daarna zeggen we, if iSubmitted is 1, return true, else return false. Lijkt me nogal overdreven als het alleen maar dit hoeft te doen. Dus keep it soepel, stupid en simpel. Doe zo min mogelijk. Hou het simpel. Nu zie je meteen wat het doet.
Heel vaak ziet het. Vorige sheet.
Deze of die
De
ervoor?
vorige.
Ja?
Ik doe het zelf ook wel, wat daar staat.
Ja.
De eerste twee regels. Want het is wel fijn. Het gaat om die iSubmit.
Nou, kijk, deze snap ik nog wel.
Ja.
Maar die snap ik niet. Je zegt
Ja,
iSubmitted is
dat
0, iSubmitted is waarschijnlijk iets anders.
Ja, maar die eerste kan op regel 5 staan en die tweede regel kan op regel 38 staan. Waarschijnlijk is de
Ja,
voorbeeld code.
Ja, vind ik wel.
Ja.
Nee, ja, maar toevallig is dit het exacte voorbeeld zoals het ergens in de code
Ja,
staat.
als het zo achter elkaar staat, dan
Ja, dus dit is vrij overdreven. En dit ook, als het 1 is, return true. De if impliceert al dat het true is of niet. Dus het is ook een beetje meer dan het goed doen. Een beetje line noise, zoals ze dat vroeger in Perl noemden. Dit is ook een prachtig voorbeeldje. Jazeker. Iemand probeert hier een naam te formateren van een persoon. En dan staan hier dus 5 ifs onder elkaar en daarna een input van de naam. Dit heeft, als je teruggaat naar de cycle met de complexiteitsscore van 5. Er staan 5 ifs.
4 toch?
Dan ben ik zo scheel? Oh, 4. Nou, het heeft een score van 4. Dit had een veel makkelijkere oplossing geweest. Array filter doet namelijk out of the box al precies wat erboven stond. Als het leeg is, haalt hij gewoon uit je array. Dit heeft een complexiteitsscore van 0. Want er zit geen enkele if, for each, loop, switch of wat dan ook in. Oftewel, in theorie is dit veel simpeler en minder bug inherent. Oké, nu komen we echt bij de nitty-gritty van clean code. En een belangrijk ding is, een commentaar vergeten, call it what it is. Noem je variabele of je klas wat het is en wat het doet. Dan heb je geen commentaar nodig. Commentaar is een plek om leugens te verzamelen. En ik heb mijn PP Storm ingesteld op een super strikte commentcontrole voor de Drupal standaard. En af en toe heb ik echt het idee dat ik comments aan het schrijven ben voor puntje. Return array data. Comment de data. Maar als je gewoon iets noemt wat het is, dan heb je dat commentaar dus ook eigenlijk niet meer nodig. Want dan kan iedereen zien, oh, het is. Dit is een voorbeeldje uit de memory backend. $red. Oké.
Ietsje groter maken?
Ja. Zo ben je. Nou, weet de doorgewinterde programmeur dat dat waarschijnlijk de return status is. De return, iets wat gereturned wordt. Maar ik vind het toch een beetje vreemd. $red, het zegt niks. Geen idee wat het is. Ja, ik weet nu toevallig dat het een array is, omdat er een blokhaak staat. Maar dit zou in een grotere blokken code, waar staat een $x is iets, of een $i, of voor i in whatever. Het is niet meer te volgen op een gegeven moment. Dus een simpele oplossing is, noem het de cache item object list, want dat is het. Blijkbaar heeft hij voor iets, die loopt door een aantal cache items, haalt een item op en stopt hem in een lijstje.
Wat doet die sits eigenlijk?
Geen idee. Ik gok dat dat een lijst van cache ID's is.
Dat wordt niet gebruikt voor return of zo. Dus
Nee,
daar wordt helemaal niks mee gedaan.
Nee, klopt. Die heb ik niet aangepast omdat de memory backend weer een interface oprijdt. Maar je zou hier eigenlijk had je moeten zeggen cache ID list. Dan had je meteen
Wat meer bedoeld is dat op de ene laatste regel staat een CI die gevuld wordt, waar verder niks meer mee gedaan
dat is een
reference.
Heb ik hem te snel
hij komt bij reference binnen.
Ja.
En dit is dan weer een duidelijk geval van een violation van de single responsibility.
Ja, dit is een side effect.
Ja, want hij verzamelt een lijst en hij past een invloed variabele.
Juist. En dit is dus een side effect. En die allow invalid, die vond ik ook wel apart. Maar daar komen we straks wel op terug.
PHP West Detector zal hierover struikelen.
Sorry?
Er staat PHP West Detector zal erover struikelen. Je zal het niet toestaan. Er zit een boolean argument in. Er zit ook meer dan één ding.
Ja, daar komen we zo nog op. Dat is iets waar ik ook vrij hard op ben namelijk. En dan komen we bij de Keep Happy Drive Left. Ik weet niet of iemand die term kent. De andere bekende term is de Happy Path Goes Down. Nee? Oké, als je een functie hebt gemaakt, verwacht je dat er iets uitkomt. Want je maakt dat ding met een reden. Het idee is, datgene wat je verwacht, is je positieve resultaat. Het resultaat blijft altijd links in de lijn van je code staan. Alles wat leidt tot een negatief resultaat. Want als je dan je code van boven naar beneden lijst, dit gaat erin, dat komt eruit. Je hoeft niet meer na te denken wat dat is, want dat is negatief. Dat zijn je uitzonderingen, dat zijn je exceptions. Dat is je null value in plaats van goedemorgen string. Whatever. En dat is dus eigenlijk, heel veel mensen gebruiken ifs. In ifs. En op een gegeven moment gaat het positieve resultaat steeds meer naar rechts. Maar je moet dus de hele tijd gaan zitten zoeken. Waar komt er nou uiteindelijk uit wat ik wil hebben? Terwijl als je het bam, daar had gezien, dan weet je het meteen. Dus default statements, dat gaat over ifs en guard statements ook. En dan heb ik dus een los stukje over break en continue. Alright, een default statement. En dit gaat dan in dit geval even niet om de output. Maar we zien hier een if en een else. Een if-else heeft een complexiteit van 2. En in dit geval, en in 9 van de 10 gevallen, voegt de else helemaal niks toe. Het enige wat het doet is namelijk, ik heb een voorwaarde, dus het wordt dit, en anders wordt het dat. Als je dit doet, het is altijd dit, tenzij dat. Dus dit is je positieve beginpunt, dit is je negatieve resultaat op basis van een voorwaarde. Terwijl je complexiteit van je functie gaat nu naar beneden. En het is veel makkelijker te lezen. Oh, dit zijn mijn standaardwaarden, dit is mijn uitzondering en ik ga weer verder. Dit is een prachtig voorbeeld van business logica die een beetje op hol is geslagen. En toen ik deze tegenkwam, gingen mijn ogen een beetje fronsen. En mijn vriendin vindt me heel lelijk als ik dat doe, dus het is een dubbele no-no. Aan degene die het gemaakt heeft, zou ik zeggen, ik geef je een tikje op de schouder. En ga deze maar even lezen. Aan degene die het goedgekeurd heeft voor Drupal Core, zou ik zeggen, ik geef je een tikje in het gezicht met het boek. En daarna zeg ik, ga het nog maar even lezen. Maar dit is echt een vrij bizarre constructie. Als het type GZ is, doe ik iets anders. Het is, doe ik iets anders. Als het type... Dus op het moment dat er een nieuw type bij komt, komt er hier nog een if in. Komt er nog een if in, komt er nog een if in. Dus dit is ten eerste mega complex. Het is niet te volgen. En voor elke nieuw type of nieuwe case die je toevoegt, voeg je alleen maar extra complexiteit toe. En op het moment dat er een uitvalt, ja, dan moet je even goed gaan tellen van hier begint hij, daar eindigt hij, die moet ik eruit slopen en dan, nou ja, oftewel refactor hell. Met een guard statement. Oh, sorry. De crux, die zit trouwens hier. Op het einde willen ze gewoon een error gooien als je niet door al die if-else's heen komt. Dus wat heb ik in het eerste voorbeeld gedaan? Ik heb het stukje van de error heb ik geabstraheerd naar een andere functie die protected is. En alles wordt toch met een interne value gedaan. En vervolgens zeg ik gewoon, als het van dit type is, open hem en proces die error eventueel. En dan stopt hij gewoon. Dit wordt nooit meer geëxecute. Als het dat niet was, dan slaat hij dit gewoon een heel stuk gewoon over en dan gaat hij naar de volgende. Etcetera, etcetera. Als je nu de structuren van die twee naast elkaar legt, is het een stuk makkelijker te volgen.
Die is voor switch.
Daar komen we ook nog op.
Waarom noem je dat een guard?
Sorry?
Waarom noem je dat een guard?
Ja, zo noemen ze dat. In het geval dat je zeg maar dingen die positief zijn links houdt en dingen die negatief zijn naar rechts, noemen ze de if noemen ze een guard, zodat de negatief naar rechts staat. Dit is gewoon terminologie. Ik heb hem ook niet verzonnen, maar ze noemen het een guard statement. En eigenlijk is een guard dat is voor hele geneste dingen te voorkomen, of om het negatief naar rechts te duwen en het positief.
Dat was altijd al het idee.
Sorry?
Sinds het begin van if-statements was dat dus al het idee.
Nou, ik weet niet of het sinds het begin van if-statements het idee is, maar op een gegeven moment zijn er mensen gekomen, maar dit soort constructies werken gewoon niet, daar moeten we een andere manier voor nodig.
Ik vind het gewoon zo frappant dat dit voor heel veel mensen een eye-opener is. Terwijl als je het hoort, denk je, ja, maar waarom eigenlijk?
Ja, je moet het soms even zien, hè?
En je vraagt je af waarom dit niet gewoon in school gewoon zo wordt gepresenteerd.
Ja, dat vraag je me ook wel zo.
Dus vandaar dat ik dacht dat dit vrij nieuw was, deze manier van werken.
Nee hoor, dit boek bestaat al sinds 91 geloof ik.
Op scholen leren ze je niet programmeren. Op scholen leren ze je de syntax.
Ja.
Ze leren je niet denken als een programmeur. Ze leren je niet hoe je goede oplossingen bereikt. Ze leren je letterlijk hoe je dat moet typen.
Ja.
En de rest leer je in het bedrijfsveld wel. En dan moet je net de mazzel hebben dat jij toevallig die ene senior developer op 5.
Ja, ik heb dat geluk wel gehad. Want ik heb zelf ook wel eens pull request gekregen. Troep mag weg. En dat was het enige document op 200 regels code.
En dan ga je even vragen, waarom zeg je dat?
En dan heb je de discussie. En dan, dit is een hack, geen oplossing. Oké.
Merge.
Ja. Soms wel als stiekem. Werkt toch? Alright. Maar hier even naar de structuur. Persoonlijk vind ik dit nog steeds een beetje iffy. Want op het moment dat er een zip of een 7-zip of een whatever bij komt, moet ik hier opnieuw een if-blokje gaan toevoegen. Dus dit is niet echt heel erg onderhoudbaar. En de complexiteit wordt per type groter en groter en groter en groter. En de functie wordt maar langer en langer en langer. En het is niet echt draaien. Sorry, en het is niet echt draaien, want ik doe elke keer hetzelfde ifje. Dus, we gaan met factories aan de gang. Ik heb hier een beetje een simpele standaard factory. Kent iemand het patroon? Oké, 1, 2. Voor factories heb je 2 modi. Eén is de creational pattern, dus je hebt factory, create instance en je krijgt een objectje terug. Dat is de creational variant. En je hebt de behavioral variant. En daarmee dient een factory eigenlijk als een soort van wrapper om een serie van objecten heen. In dit geval kun je zien, ik heb hier een lijstje, file opener strategy list, is een array. En ik kan hier objecten in registreren. Ik zeg register met een bepaalde key, een opener strategy interface van dat type. En als ik hem al heb, dan gooi ik gewoon een error. Hier moet ik zeggen, this file opener strategy list is die strategy. Nou, 1 regeltje vergeten. Maar neem aan, deze strategy wordt in dit lijstje toegevoegd. Vervolgens heb ik een function, heb ik een bepaalde key. En ik heb een function, get een bepaalde key. En wat dit ding doet is, als ik hem niet heb, gooi ik in een caption. Heb ik hem wel, geef ik gewoon dat object terug. Op deze manier kun je dus uit deze factory zeggen, ik wil een strategie hebben voor een file opener met de naam bz2 of zip of welke variant ze ook hebben. Nou, ik heb hier een hele simpele interface. Je hebt een function, kan ik een file openen en openen maar. En vervolgens is er hier een simpel voorbeeld van de GZ opener strategy. En als je de originele code ziet, zie je hier dus, dit is de chat. Ik zou hier persoonlijk nog aan toegevoegd hebben, is does file exist. Ook idee. Want als je GZ opent en de file bestaat niet, heb je nog steeds een probleem. Anyway, ik heb hier dus een GZ opener strategy. Die zegt, als je GZ open hebt, dan mag je een file openen. En vervolgens heb ik een functie die heet open file. En die returnt een GZ open file. Waarschijnlijk is het een resource of een handle van een of andere formaat. Nou, ik heb hetzelfde gedaan voor de BZ file open strategy. Ja?
Waarom staat er add? Return add.
Ja, nou, dat is ook iets wat ik heel vies vind. Add onderdrukt je errors. Dat stond ook in de originele code, dus dat heb ik maar even laten staan. Maar als iemand bij mij dit in een pull request doet, dan krijg je geen approve. Dan had je dit moeten ondervangen met of een exception of op een andere manier. Want nu weet je niet of het misgaat. Het doet gewoon maar wat. Alright. Nu moeten we even aannemen dat in de class waar deze override in zit, this factory is geïnject via de constructor als zijnde deze file opener strategy. En dat al onze losse openers al geregistreerd zijn in de factory. Vervolgens is dit de nieuwe code. Als mijn factory niet een opener heeft van het bepaalde type, gooi ik gewoon een error. Unknown or missing compression type. Vervolgens haal ik die opener op. En als de opener vindt dat hij een file niet kan openen, gooi ik opnieuw een error. De file opener is unable to open the file. Vervolgens zeg ik, this file is file opener open. En de originele error check die ik in de vorige variant naar een losse functie had gedaan, kan ik hier weer terugzetten, want die losse functie is niet meer nodig. Als de file niet nul is, een beetje apart check, maar dan heb ik iets goed gedaan en anders geef ik een error. Get light, tot de volgende structuur. If, klaar. En op het moment dat ik een zip of een zip wil toevoegen, het enige wat ik hoef te doen is een nieuwe class maken. Ik heb een 7-zip file strategy opener en die zet ik in de factory en het werkt. Punt. Wil ik er een weghalen, dan delete ik hem gewoon. En deze functie hoef ik nooit meer aan te passen. Hier kan ik dus nu heel makkelijk een unit test op schrijven. Op het moment dat mijn strategy lijst wijzigt of dingen toevoegen, dingen weghalen. Mijn unit test blijft in dit geval altijd draaien. Want die unit test mag niet afhankelijk zijn van de injected. Dus ik weet dat als ik dit ding getest heb, kan ik op elk willekeurig moment elke variant van een file openen in die functie knallen. Dit ding is veel simpeler geworden en veel rekbaarder. En het enige wat we gedaan hebben is gewoon stukjes weghalen en eigenlijk one-liners van gemaakt. Open het maar. Doe maar. If, else, why. Zoals ik al eerder genoemd had, heel veel else's zijn vrij overbodig. Als de cache ID gezet is, dan return ik prepare item, else returning false. Iemand een idee waarom dit nogal overdreven is? Ja. Die else kan gewoon weg. Als het wel zo is, stopt hij. Hij returnt, dus hij komt hier sowieso nooit. En ik heb hem hier nog nu omgedraaid, want mijn negatieve resultaat was niet vals. Ik had verwacht dat ik een prepare item terugkrijg. Dus als hij niet gezet is, return false, klaar. En anders return ik prepare item. Dit is wederom een guard statement. Ik guard mijn positieve output naar de negatieve. Dit ding voorkomt dat er iets fout gaat.
En je kunt beginnen met gewoon je happy flow en daarna daarboven allemaal.
Ja, daarom.
Afvang ergens.
Ja, eigenlijk als je echt het TDD adagium zou aanhouden, heb je function get, return dit ding. En dan maak je je test op, krijg ik dat ding eruit en vervolgens ga je de rest invullen. Want alles wat negatief is, dat doet er niet toe. Je moet het uiteindelijk wel testen natuurlijk, maar dat is een ander verhaal.
We doen het ook wel een return early.
Ja, return early, return often, return fast.
De term guard kennen we letterlijk niet letterlijk in PHP. En andere talen, zoals bijvoorbeeld Swift, dan heb je wel een guard statement. En doe je eigenlijk het omgekeerde. Guard, dus waak dat deze voorwaarde waar is. Als dat niet het geval is, dan return je. En daarom heet het ook guard, omdat je iets waarborgt. Eerst waarborg je al je
negatieve flows.
Al je negatieve dingen. Alles wat je wil vaststellen dat er waar is, dat guard je eerst. En daarna ga je eigenlijk, als je happy flow uitvoert.
En wat je daarbij ook kan doen is gebruik maken van assertion libraries. En dan krijg je dingen als if assert that is string, een variabele. En als het ook maar iets anders dan een string is, krijg je een exceptie. Dan hoef je eigenlijk dan heb je niet eens de if statement meer nodig.
Nee, ja.
Assert that is string. En alles wat niet oké is, krijg je een exceptie. Die je dan weer kan afvangen.
Ja. Maar soms is dat ook wel een beetje overdreven.
Soms is dat weer een beetje vergaan.
Ja.
Dat is nog weer een stap.
Inderdaad, want dan kom je straks weer om in de try-catch box. Alright. Loops, ook zo vroeg mogelijk breken. Ik heb hier even een pseudo voorbeeld van gemaakt. Ik heb hem meerdere malen deze constructie gezien. Ik kon hem door tijdgebrek niet meer terugvinden. Vraag me af of iemand hem ziet. Waarom dit echt zo fout is.
By the way, our English speaking guest says,
oh, okay.
Maybe we should switch.
We should switch to English, no problem. So,
Sophie.
oh no, that's right. Also, for loops, you want to break as early as possible. here is we do a for each. And the only thing we needed to know was is the child in the list important, which is this variable. But once we have set it to true, the loop keeps on going. So if your first iteration was true and you have 5,000 items, you'll be doing 4,999 loops, which you didn't need to do. And since Drupal contains about 10,000 for each statements, if you do a few wrong, you can really fuck up your performance. So once you found the state you needed to check, just break the loop. You don't need to do anything anymore. Just put in a break. And in this example, it's even simpler because you can just return it. Now I have to turn around the check. If it's not in the list, continue the loop. If it is, return true. If we didn't find anything in the whole data set, just return false. Right. If you have nested loops, don't do them. This can be really bothersome when doing your testing, because you are creating a bunch of new internal paths your code goes through, and at a certain point you just don't know what you can expect anymore. So if you do a loop in a loop, always try to extract the inner loop. Just put it in a new method. And it makes your outer loop just much cleaner as well. You have 3 lines instead of going further down the road in your nesting tree. For each children, process the orphans. You have a method process the orphans, which does the internal loop. And if necessary, this example didn't give the proper thing, but if needed, you can just return the inner loop, or you could return a false or whatever. You could test this inner loop if it would be a public function. In this case, it's protected. You don't ever need to test protected methods. If this would have been a public function, you could just test this part. Once you integrate it into the outer loop or the other method, you know it's tested, you know it's working. And again, we turned around some of the if statements. Switch. Switch is a hack. Switch is a means to do things which you couldn't solve properly. Some languages, like Python, don't even have a switch. Programmers who don't know how to solve it do it if, else, if, else, if, else, if, else, if, else. But that's not a lot of you. And that's actually what a switch is. It's an if, else, if loop with the extra functionality of falling through a loop. So, and Drupal is full of switches, even switches with just one case. Switch something, case X, break, and then the switch stops. I'm sorry?
And to do.
No to do it. It's really weird. This is a fairly simple thing. We tried to do a switch on a section. We have a case title, we have a case display. Now, it's a little bit hard to see when zoomed in, but actually, this is duplicate code. Both call a set option with a name and some form value. This one does this exactly the same thing, only this uses the variable section. This one uses a hard-coded site name title. But this is duplicate code. You should try fix it with a map. Just create a map for your function calls. We have a key, we have a value, and we still, now we have one check. If the key does not exist, just quit. It's the negative. We didn't have this in the switch anyway, so we can just quit. And then you do a set option with the key and the defined value in your map. Once you, and this is a pretty simple example, but if you have this like 10 or 20 times in a row, it's much easier to read.
This is a simple version of refactoring.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And it takes away a lot of complexity, and it's much more scalable. Because now you just need to edit the map. You don't have to edit the business logic. If you do a switch, you add more complexity, you add more business logic. And for really simple switches, this is the way to go. Here is kind of the same idea. We have the build form, which is a longer switch. And these are really long lines. But in fact, this is exactly the same. Every line does exactly the same thing. We all append something to a form array with C1, 2, 3 arguments, of which 2 arguments were the same actually. So we have the configuration change type map with the key value pair. And if you need to have more arguments, just make the value an array. Or a keyed array or an object.
So how would you change something where the actions within the case statement aren't the same?
Then you probably would use the strategy pattern I used in the example. Because then you can extract the business logic within the switch block into a separate method.
Make it a function and just call the function.
Yeah.
Value in a function.
Yeah. The only difficult thing then is you really have to check really well what each switch block is.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of hard to define a static interface based on multiple types of code. But that should be the way to go. And if you really cannot fix it, then you might have to go like create a string which represents a method and just execute a custom method for that switch. But here we did the same thing. We just created a map. We look through the map. If the key doesn't exist, we can continue. We append the form. Pretty simple. And this was referenced to earlier. Don't ever use Boolean. Oh, this afternoon we actually found a case where it did make sense. But that was.
It looked like an argument, but
yeah, it was actually a configuration setting. But don't ever use Boolean arguments in method calls. Boolean argument implements that your method or your class does more things than one. It implements like a split brain. If I append this Boolean true or false, it will probably do 2 things. And I found this really beautiful example in Drupal core. We have a public function called add command with a command interface. Prepend is false. How in hell does an add command have the functionality to prepend a command?
That would just be the function prepend command.
Yeah. So this is really weird. And someone just added, okay, we probably need to prepend it sometimes, so we'll just add the flag prepend. And now this extra flag just totally rips the naming convention of the method out of its context. Because it does 2 things right now. So the simplest solution is you have 2 methods. Add command, prepend command. Done. Does exactly the same thing without the weird duality of the
add command probably have been better named.
Yeah, definitely.
That would even be better.
Yeah.
I guess it was probably a backwards compatibility thing.
I just left the name for what it was. I was a bit short on time, but that kind of things are always up for debate, naming conventions.
No, but I mean the previous example, where adding another method, prepend command later,
yeah,
would be backwards compatibility.
Yeah, that would break it definitely.
And having prepend false
if you
would
want
not break backwards compatibility.
If you wanted to have done it backwards compatible, you might have left this one in your current semantic version. If prepend, and then you would do prepend command with the command, and you would abstract this part out anyway.
It would probably even be better to say, to be backwards compatible, you could just have the add command function as it is. It would call out to a new function.
Yeah, append and prepend, yeah, definitely. And you would have put a deprecated notice above it.
Yeah.
I love very strict message. Don't use this.
Yeah.
I love that deprecated.
Good time to use this function.
Yeah, so we just extracted out the lower part and we split up the two methods. And this is it. I don't know how are we on time?
Ja, dat is
We have some questions.
Zijn we nog binnen het?
Zeker.
Brian?
Eten komt pas om 7 uur.
Okay. Because I also kind of prepared a drawing where everything falls together. It's really technical. I don't know if anyone's up to it.
I do have questions though. Don't
Yeah,
you
sure.
have any questions?
Well, maybe first do the questions, and if we have time left, I can do the total design pattern thing. So, any questions so far? Yeah.
So I have two questions.
Yes.
One, functions that have that return multiple types.
Yep.
Do they also add to the complexity?
I
I can imagine.
It might, but it wouldn't have to. It adds to confusion more than complexity, probably.
Well, it adds to the complexity of the calling code.
Yeah.
So
because you
whatever,
need to have
whatever
it somewhere.
function that calls that is going to have to do at least one if statement to check the return statement.
Yeah.
But it's, if it's more than two types, it gets worse exponentially.
That's true. And another complexity question.
Mhm.
Do classes make more complexity? Or if
No.
they don't, why not?
No, complexity is always calculated on method basis. And usually the total of the methods in a class is the class complexity, or the average of the class complexity.
Yeah, because now you're solving a lot of things by just like pulling them out and making a separate method
Yeah.
for it. But isn't that why is that less complex?
Well, because if you pull out the complexity of one method, like the if else example, like every if counts for a point, and else counts for a point, but a nested if gives you an extra bonus point.
All right. Yeah.
So the more you start nesting, the higher the count gets, because it's like a lot of log scale.
But what it does in the end is still
It does exactly the same
nest,
thing.
basically.
No, it doesn't nest anymore, because we took away all the nesting. Everything was to the left side. If you
Yeah, I know, and like in what we see.
Like in this
nesting,
example.
you're right about that, but I mean, like in the end, like what it could do is still the same.
No, it's not.
What it does is exactly the same, actually. But the metric complexity, like measured complexity, is less because it's far easier to read.
Oh.
And your system has to do less computing.
Because
less
I
interpreting.
understood it was about paths that
Yeah.
the code can take, but if you just take it out into a function, it still has the same amount of paths, right?
No, because like in this example, we have if else, if else, if else, if else. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paths, and an extra if. Every nested path gets a bonus score.
All right.
Like, and then in the first example, we had just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the possible path is reduced significantly.
Like every nested if statement increases, doubles the number of possible paths taken through the code.
And for each is a switch, it's
theoretically
even worse.
Yeah, switches make it even worse.
And like in the factory version, we had 3 if statements in the outer method, so that had a score. The factory itself had a score of 2, which is still lower than the second example. And all the separate factories all had a score of 0, because they didn't do anything, just a one-liner.
I believe that's how complexity is calculated. I'm just trying to understand why that matters, because if your external method has an if in it, and you call that method with every if that you make, like the 4 ifs that are above
Yeah.
that, still be if and if, because you're still going into that method every time.
Let me see. You mean this?
Yeah.
You're not going into it because the if goes either in or out. This is a one path. It goes in or just continues.
But the difference between this guarded version and the class version is that you replace the ifs by classes. So what you're doing is now statistical, trying to optimize your statistics. Because if I want to
but
add
also
another version, if I
agree.
Add an if statement, or if I add a class, I have to touch the code.
Yeah, but in the class example, it's scalable. This isn't.
Yeah, if you want to add a new situation, you have to open this specific file to add an if statement. So you're changing this code.
The risk of changing too much.
And you risk breaking it. While if you just have to add a new class and register it with the factory, you're not changing anything, you're just adding something. In this case, you're actually changing stuff.
And you can add one test for that one new class.
Right, yes. Instead of possibly breaking your tests and breaking stuff. So the complexity of only having to add something compared to actually changing something, all different things.
And it's much safer, because I don't know how many of you have had this problem. You change something here and this breaks. That's a really, really big problem if you don't structure your code right. Like in this example with the factory, we can do whatever we want to the separate strategies. It will never break this method, which is called. Because the strategies will never be directly called from anything but this method, probably. Unless you inject it somewhere else because you wanted to do the same thing.
Basically, if you look at Solid, this version violates the open close principle. So if you violate one of the 5 letters in the Solid acronym, then you're doing it wrong. And using the factory method, you actually you don't violate it, because you can actually change the functionality of that piece of code without changing the piece of code.
So, are there any more questions?
With refactoring you have a method, and because one of the methods has a boolean, and then you create another method. Doesn't adding new methods also add to complexity? So are you, by refactoring and refactoring and refactoring, are you just
it might add to the combined complexity of the class. It might.
So then you have to refactor the entire class too.
It depends. Well, like reducing cyclomatic complexity is not the be-all and end-all. It has to function, it has to function properly, and it has to be maintainable. So sometimes when you add complexity, it's fairly all right. But if you can take away complexity because there is a better solution, then do it. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it is.
And sometimes you can reduce complexity just by reducing the lines of code in a function. A function that's longer than your screen is very difficult to understand because you have to keep track of everything that happens within the function. While if you can take away a part of that function and put in a separate function, it's that single line instead of the 30 lines.
Yeah. That's the thing with the nested for each. Like the inner part of the for each, the second for each, I just Control X, make a new method, Control V, and the outer method is much easier to read.
But I can also imagine when you have a class and it has maybe 5 methods and with high complexity, that it's for someone using the class, implementing the class, it's easier to use instead of one class that has 25 methods and you have to pick the right one.
Have 25.
It might have
just, and that's where the distinction between public and protected comes in. If you need to abstract out parts of your public interface, which you don't, which you want to take out because it's simpler, but you don't need to expose them publicly. Just put them in protected, and then have your PHP Storm or your IDE just format the thing. Public methods on top, protected methods down there. You don't ever have to look at your protected stuff.
It also goes back to the single responsibility principle. If your class has 25 public methods,
just
you have to
probably does too
rethink the
much.
responsibility of that class. Is it still fulfilling just one responsibility? With so much methods, should you split it up in different classes that fulfill different responsibilities?
When I look at a method which has about 15 to 20 lines, I get itchy. And sometimes it's just it needs to be done. But when I look at it's kind of long.
It also depends on how it's set up, on what it does. I mean, 25 lines of code usually has various levels of nesting, and then
definitely.
But in certain situations, you're just mapping values together, and that just takes 25 lines.
Yeah, definitely.
Fine.
An array definition like a form array, if that's 150 lines, it doesn't look nice, but it's the only way to go.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can do, with form arrays, you could actually take it apart and you could just have your main form builder and have separate functions for each of the components.
It's just a.
But it's all about the abstraction level.
Yeah. The smaller your parts are, the easier they're to interconnect and the easier they're to maintain. So
it's a lot of practice.
Yeah, definitely. And because I've read these books probably 2 or 3 times each, and when I do a pull request, I immediately spot it. But it takes time, definitely. We have 15 minutes left, right? I hope everyone can see and follow this.
The laptop can't actually see.
Oh, it doesn't really matter. So I've made this really simple yet complex thing. This is the world, and they connect to a Drupal controller. It's just a controller that serves you a page. It serves a page in HTML, RSS, JSON, or whatever. And for this thing, I've created a cache manager. So we need to cache which type of output we've requested based on the conditions of the request. So the controller asks the cache manager, hey, give me a key for these conditions. Then he asks, do you have something for me with this key? If it replies yes, okay, it just returns the cached output and it goes back into the world. Oh, this is a little detail. Cache manager has consecutive lists of cache backends. So we have Redis, Memcache, SQL, and disk. SQL and disk are pretty slow compared to the other two. So the cache manager, we ask the cache manager, do you have something for me with this key? And he goes to the cache backend manager and he checks Redis. No, I don't have it. Memcache has it. Okay, give it back. But what if these other two go away? Someone pulled the plug of the Redis machine and it's gone. So these cannot answer anymore. And then it goes to SQL. And this is like the factory pattern I showed in the example. Except these are responsible for returning the response whether they can do it or not. So the cache manager loops through all his registered items. And if one gives a positive answer, it just breaks the loop and it goes back. Otherwise, if Redis cannot find it, maybe Memcache has it. And these are 2 little stars. And this is the event dispatcher and a listener. So I don't have it, but SQL does have it. SQL is slow. So SQL will throw a dispatch cache hit event. I found a cache hit, but I'm SQL and I'm slow. I have an event listener somewhere which listens to this cache hit, and it gets an ID, just the cache ID. So this event listener will listen to the event, and oh, I got to do something. I will enter an item in the Drupal queue, which is like a queuing system. It's pretty simple when you compare it to something like Rabbit or Kafka, but it does the job. So I'll put an item in a queue, and the queue worker, which is listening to the queue, will try to get this cache hit from SQL, like in the background process, and inject it back in Redis, because that's the fastest we have. If Redis is not available, then I will try Memcache. So this cache hit will go up or down in level based on which services are available.
If we don't have anything, we needed to request the data from an external web service, which is really slow. So we need to cache this as well. This external web service client does the same thing. It just tries to find cache hits on the list of backends based on a certain amount of conditions and a timestamp. Okay, I found my cache in Redis. Okay, I'll return it to the cache manager. This will return it to the controller. The controller will say, okay, I found this data set. I need to format it as RSS, and I'll write this back to the cache engine. So the next hit will directly be requested from Redis. And in this way, all these patterns fall together. And you have this really, really dynamic system where you can just swap out any cache backend. You can swap out the external web service, because if you need it to connect to another web service, or just swap this out. And the only thing you have to change is the client which you injected into an initial controller. This is stuff we are actually doing on a current project. So based on all the design patterns which I in the list, we have this really, really super dynamic system where we can swap everything in and out if we need to. So if there's a new cache backend, we'll just pop it in. I don't know. Drupal has its own caching mechanism. I haven't looked into it. We're kind of in the designing process of this thing. We wanted to adhere to the PSR 6 standards, which is kind of the interfacing for this problem. I don't know if anyone knows PHP Fig. Okay. They have a caching interface standard, and that means you have a cache manager and they call it backends, but I've thought about doing this management thing in between, so you can even swap this one out. If you want to just do disk, okay, put in a disk manager and be done with it. And we have formatters, which get the returned code formatted in a certain way and output it back to the client. These formatters can also be switched out randomly. If we don't need to support JSON anymore, bye, you're gone. RSS is kind of going on the way out, bye. HTML usually is nice for everyone, but we needed to add XML. We just swap in a new XML formatter, and we can still serve any type of content we need to. And this is all like, this is a factory pattern which falls through all, which as an integrated iterator, it just loops all through all the things. This is a separate object. Oh, this is just injected in a controller. This one, the client as well. And the cache manager is also injected into the client. So if you abstract all these separate parts out, you can make these really, really nice solutions, which you can reuse. Because if you made these all separate modules, like a Drupal mod cache manager, Drupal mod cache backend manager, Drupal mod Redis backend, you can use Composer. If you don't use Composer in Drupal 8, please do it. You can load these in with Composer and you're done. The only thing you have to do is define which services connect and inject into each other, and everything works. So any questions about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't pay attention that time, but what does it exactly do? Like, what is the function of this?
The function of this is our data set is dependent on an external web service. We don't want or need to flood the external web service with requests. So we need to cache anything coming in from the service. But we also need to output separate types of output. So we need to format them, and to take away all that processing power, we just cache the formatted output as well.
Yeah, so the caching layers is what you're building, and the external system is not part of that.
No, this is the only thing we're building to the external system is its client. And this client can talk to the external system, and that will fetch data and give it back to us.
And what do you call this? Is it a Drupal module already?
If you no, not yet. We're going to be implementing it probably soon for a project we're doing, and this is the drawing I made for this example here.
Do you have
a name for what?
for this?
No, not yet. But it might become some Drupal module. We don't know yet. We just have to work out all specifications and the way we want to integrate it into the system.
Yeah, a whole collection. It's a platform.
Yeah, it's probably all separate modules.
And beauty of it, it's tied together through the service container. And for instance, right now, we're the actual web service we're going to talk to isn't yet developed even, but we're already working on the front end where the data arrives. How are we doing that? We created mock services.
Yeah.
And because they're components that are injected through the service container, at the point that the other party finishes development of the backend service, can just swap out our mock service in the container and inject the actual service.
No, we only have to change the server name in the YAML file. Yeah. But actually, that's like, if you forget this thing, we already did this. This is an external web service client, which we built. And it's just a JSON API client, and which can connect to any service which serves JSON API valid responses. So we made like a global module out of this, which we can reuse in all projects. But the external service is not ready. So we have defined our own module, which is a mock version of that external service, and we're telling them what to give us. So we can, we can do the whole flow of the application, and when the external service is done, the only thing we have to do is change the server name in the config, and it works. But sorry, yeah.
No, I was just thinking that some of these parts are already like in Drupal.
Yeah, they might.
For example, like the HTML, RSS, JSON responses, the serialization module, which has the power of the normalizers to convert the responses, and also
we use that in combination with JMS. Yeah. But if you need to reprocess all these responses again on output, why not just cache them?
Yeah, and I think also you have like the Redis module.
Yeah, We reuse that kind of stuff, of course. We're not going to.
So there are already modules for parts of this.
We're not going to build everything that already exists. That's obvious.
This is just to answer her question. Like, is this going to be a module?
No, this should all be separate modules.
I think some of them are available.
I think the main point, at least to me here, is that by using a really high level of abstraction, something was created that's really swappable. You can just
and scalable.
And scalable by that high level of abstraction using service container time, everything together. We are able to really swap things in and out really easily because everything's really loosely coupled.
Yeah, just like the mail notification system I mentioned earlier, which is in the same project. We just reused some Drupal contrib modules, like the flag module, the Drupal queue manager, and we just tied them together with some really, really small specified modules we made ourselves, which we can share among other projects. So,
like read-in services or whatever.
Yeah, you could call it that. Yeah.
Are you going to support cache invalidation, or?
Well,
is it already
for me, like if you generate a key on the specific conditions you need, you'll add a datetime format or something. So the key itself invalidates itself. If you don't have it, you create it. If you have it, you get it back. And then you'll probably have some queue manager running in the background, like, okay, delete all items which are older than 48 hours or something.
And then something gets changed in the backend, in the external web service, or how would you invalidate based on a remote change?
Well, basic invalidation to the external service would be time-based, usually. So,
you can also
I can hash this key. Well, if you take in the time into the hash, it invalidates itself in the request.
And then would you like create an extra event listener when something gets pulled from cache?
Yeah, you could
also check if this has been changed.
Yeah, of course, you could do that. You could have the external web service polled once in a while, doing a queue item. A queue worker will poll, oh, it has changed, and these items will need to be refreshed. Yeah, of course.
How do you recommend you investigate cache tags in Drupal 8.
The cache what?
Cache tags.
Okay.
The time-based invalidation is really Drupal 7 stuff. We're moving away from that. And you get it for free in core.
Okay.
Imrius is the guy who built it for.
All right.
He's quite approachable.
Okay, cool. So, we'll have a look into it.
Most of your right side of the drawing for free.
Okay, that's nice.
You don't even need to do anything. You just get
the first thing I usually do is just watch and look on packages. Of course.
Isn't that mainly used for grouping cache items together? So if this gets changed, you need to flush more items from cache, and
if you have here, right, you have a response and you have like a cache records. So that's also a group of items that you can invalidate when the response changes. So
for output,
so
I understand what you mean. You just link separate items together on a tag.
Doesn't even can be a single thing.
Yeah.
What you mentioned, you define it as a key.
Yeah.
You replace your story with a tag.
Okay. Oh, I'll definitely look into it. Thank you. So, any more?
Are you going to make a schedule like that and give it to anyone who uses the package?
If we're gonna be working this out, because we probably will need to implement it, but it's something that's nice to have, or it might become a must-be. But we already thought out the process of how it should work. If we're gonna be doing it, there will be schedules, schemas, and they might even become contracts. I don't know. It all depends on what we need to do. They might just be internal modules. Who knows? Yeah? Okay, time for pizza.
Okay, dankjewel. Ja. Ja, wat de als je er eenmaal in zit, het party is nog alles. Het is steeds makkelijker. Ja, dat is ja, zeker. Ja. Ja, bij de Ja, dankjewel. Lekker. Nee, maar ja, eigenlijk al een beetje
Sorry.
Ik wel.
Ja, nee, ik heb elkaar.
Hey Bas.
Ik ken ook alle dingen die in mijn proberen altijd fout is. Dat ken ik allemaal. Ja, voor iets. Ja, maar het is ook hij staat zo even als het uitziet, dan komt het ook niet. Eens krijg je een komma. Ja, maar ik heb dan best wel. Ik heb er 2 voor Virgin bij. Dat was 7, dus ik ben heel positief. Dus inderdaad voor die maar ja, oké. Ik kan het maar soms denk ik dat ik kan helemaal niet. Ik heb 20 jaar in Nederland ja, dat was het leuk. Dat is iets organisch zo. Als je ja, wij zaten soms ah ja.
Nee, wij zitten echt allemaal op elkaar. Dus wij hebben hier 2 teams. Heb jij niet het ja, nee, ik heb heel wat ja, alles. Nee. Ik val het hier mee. Slecht gezegd, joh. Dat overleg ik niet. Als er die aanpassing is, ja, ja,
als je juist ja, dat is alle aan de gang. Ja, natuurlijk. Je kan meedoen
Ja, dat is
Maar gaan we zo weer beginnen.
Zo, mensen. Het is wel lastig om te leren, ja, maar het is wel harder bij. Zo van die keuken.
Ah, Jeroen helpt wel.
Oh ja, we staan ook nog steeds op.
Ja. Ja, bijna. Ik dacht, doe nog even je pizzadoos.
Hallo?
Het wachtwoord.
Still streaming. We're still streaming.
Yeah, that's why I'm going through. Okay, camera's there. Let's avoid it.
Where are you from?
A little bit of everything. I should say South America. That would be hardly true. You still feel like South American. Like, I know I have the accent. I was born in Canada. Like usually happens is when you speak Dutch, people tell you worse. It's really speaking. So when people start having trouble speaking back to me in English, I switch to Dutch and then people like
Okay, they don't appreciate you trying to.
Well, I think it's een big picture. Ik wou het nog graag over de presentatie. data.
Ja, dat is een vraag.
Ja, maar ik wil iets anders. Oh ja, dat is goed. Okay. When I was in my phase of trying to speak Dutch, I came across a bunch of different things. Like, for example, people telling me that they couldn't sell me a hamburger because it was Ramadan. Yeah. Once I went to buy a pair of scissors, and the lady in front of me used to be a Dutch teacher, and when she took it upon herself to start explaining to me that it was what I had in my hand was a scarf, and that she could with a scarf and like grab my hair so I could I just felt like I was a kindergartner kid. So I just go with English because I know that even though I have an accent, my vocabulary is big enough, and I sound like a melody skirt, and like people don't really mess with it. Well, actually, I haven't tried it yet, because I was going to a school teacher studied English. I know. Wanted to tell you. So I was a school teacher, and then I decided that I wanted a geek character because none of my colleagues actually understood my geekiness. So I decided to take a year to kind of teach myself a little bit of code. I'm still in that road, but now I found my first job as a developer, and I'm working for PHP.
How did you find this tech talk?
So the first friend, which I really liked, told me there was this where it was about Drupal and it was really nice.
Deze tekening dit te veel.
I should actually take a look at it, so here I am.
Ja.
It makes a lot of sense. I really like the idea behind it. It's difficult. It makes sense, but it makes it difficult to actually like mentally internalize how to actually write it in a simple way. Because I think that the tendency is actually to Hey, nice meeting you. Tell you.
Als jullie het drinken konden vinden, staat in de podcast bier als het goed is. Staat het daar
Dat is een goede reden om ja.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to the second session. Lessons learned from maintaining open source enterprise sites. I adjusted the title a little bit for my initial talk. Hello?
Could you move your name?
Oh,
We can't see.
I will move it. Better?
Yes.
Am I still on the video? Yeah. Not sure who's watching, but so what's in this presentation? It will be a little bit less technical than the last one. Sorry, people like that. But yeah, first part will be an introduction and open social. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the project itself, so I'm going to tell a little bit about this. And then examples where we run into when we try to upgrade the platform to a new version of Open Social. I'm explaining why we had this problem. You think how you made the thing, why you had problems updating it, but you will learn later. And last part will be a little bit discussion and the future of configuration management in core. You're saying why should we need this? It's in Drupal 8 core. There are still some issues which we run into. We still use features, and I will discuss the path forward there and how we use it currently. So let's start. My name is Niels van der Molen. By the way, the slides will be online later. I can upload them to the media, so you don't have to take notes. And there's some reference there, so you can click on, go to my profile. Not sure why you want to do this. Okay. My function is I'm a solution architect. So I was a 4-year developer, mostly back-end code. Worked 2 years with Open Social, on the core team that created the thing. But I grow more to an enterprise architect where I think about solutions and diagrams and not so much about code and if it's clean or the argument isn't Boolean. So that's I miss that sometimes. I'm not actually not doing a lot of code, but so this talk will contain a bit less code, a little bit more diagrams. So the story about our company as well a bit. I work for Gorilla. It's located in Enschede, Amsterdam. And we had this project. It's called Greenpeace Greenwire. It started out as a project only for the Dutch Greenwire. Everybody is familiar with Greenpeace, I hope. So they wanted the volunteer community. And we said, yeah, we can build it. So we built it. And then they said, oh, this is great. We want it for a whole international Greenpeace. So we launched more and more domains on this. So we now have a location for this in every country or every continent in the world, Africa, China, you name it, Russia, it has a Greenpeace Greenwire. So it was a great success. And we won a great award, a Dutch Interactive Award. I didn't hear of it before we won it, but it's like the most prestigious prize in the Netherlands or something. So we got a lot of requests from other people. Hey, it's a great platform. We want to have this. Can you copy paste it for us? And then we have it. We said basically yes. If you put $1 million to us, we can make it something similar for you. Great. So they said, oh, it's a bit too much. And yes, so we saw this need of other people wanting to have a platform where they can communicate, where they can share things, where they can engage with their audiences. Then we created Open Social. So it is a distribution for Drupal 8, and it has features, it has notifications, it has groups, like all the things you really need for a community. It's sort of a Facebook, but then open source. But it's also a SaaS product. So we also said like we don't want something that we have to create over and over again, but we want to have something that scales to multiple customers. And we said it has to be open source. We worked with open source. We worked with Drupal, of course. We worked with contributed modules. We contributed modules. We also said we want to have our core product. And this is the graph. If you look at the statement, it's a bit outdated, but it will be there in a few weeks, I hope. So this is the users. There are currently 300 active websites running on Open Social. And this is, of course, with the update module, which you can disable. So it is more than this, but we don't know how much. But we also wanted to stay doing enterprise projects. We're good at this. And this is our first launching customers, the United Nations. And we actually create multiple platforms for them. And this is a great example of a discussion platform where they want to discuss policies. They want to invite a lot of people, important professors and stakeholders to have a discussion online and then have the result published later for a conference. Actually, 50,000 users were imported and invited to participate in the first consultation, they call it. But we also see a lot of this. We published the source code, of course, and I think this is a great example for the Netherlands Organization for Scientific Research, the NWO. They want to have an intranet. It looks a bit different design than the original one, but it's still a very cool project. They built this starting Open Social, and we see a lot of these companies taking the distribution, doing something. So we have the whole range of SaaS product, enterprise, community projects. So it's a great success. But what is it? It's a full-featured distribution. That's important thing to recognize. So there's a bit of a difference between starter kits, where you can just take it and do something with it, or a full-featured distribution. Because we didn't design it as a starter kit. It's for special, it's a complete solution. So out of the box, it works. We don't want you to change too much about it. Well, adding new features, of course, it's cool, but we don't expect you to change the whole interaction design, for example, or the whole design. Opinionated choices are being made, so we think this is the best choice for this specific problem we have in design, in features, but also in interaction design. And we're clear about this. It's our opinion. We think it's the best. And this is, you can say that it should be flexible. You should basically do everything about it. That's the other direction. But we say no. We take the choice. We dare to choose. If it's wrong, we can maybe go back on it later if we are convinced. For now, it's not this case. And we also wanted to have the flexibility to change things. It's only a 2-year-old project. So also warning to people that use it, we will change architecture. It's stable in the sense that we provide an upgrade path, but not for everything. And this is our company. The first 2 teams have a designer, so the last thing I created today, explaining the difference in quality. So the first team is the Gypsys team. Jaap sitting there, he's the product owner of the product. And they developed this SaaS product. They're also in charge of the distribution, so core and SaaS product. But we also have an enterprise team. It's pretty separated, so we also try to mimic that don't work with us, but also other companies. They have the same problems we have, basically, as the enterprise team, and I'm more involved in that team. And we have a support and maintenance team, the IT crowd. So it's doing support, maintenance also, but also updates, upgrades, and a few other things. Yes, so the community software is very broad, and we recognize this. And we don't really know where our market fit is, so what direction we want to go in as a company. So we focus currently on features that overlap on a lot of things that we know are relevant for, like most community software features. We have some community specific, like social login, social sharing, and we see some intranet specific features being developed by the community. But we also have a lot of features we make custom for enterprise. So these are sort of not all our enterprise customers, but a few. U4Peace was the first project we did. So we did a lot of bug fixing with them in the distribution. And they have like a custom download counter feature. Pachamama, it's the second one. It has multi-language. You can switch to English or Spanish. A course module, a HubSpot integration, public groups. They're actually a big partner for us for creating features, and not everything is in open source yet. This public dialogues platform, which is the global dev hub, was creating the social login feature, which is in the distro. A discussion module where you can have different phases in discussion, attachments to comments. And now we're working with a philanthropy site also for the UN. They want to have like a resource library where you can search files and documents and discuss them in the community, share them, a lot of these features, and we are actually creating them now for them. And landing pages, they want to have something visual, very nice looking, very corporate, where they want to tell a story, these landing pages. We also create this for them. And yeah, just put this up for Yoast, they have LDAP integration with Microsoft Workforce, something with vacancies.
High service vacancies, workforce is
HR department. So they did a lot of integrations for this institute. And they translated the website to Dutch as well. And we have, of course, the product team that's building the core SaaS product and adding a lot of features to the distribution as well. So a lot of going on in Open Social, and probably more than this. We know of a company in Tokyo, working for the Tokyo Institute, also creating things. We don't have a showcase yet, so we still have to ask them exactly what features. But we see people doing things with Open Social, creating new features. And this poses somewhat of a problem and opportunity. So we started the Youth for Peace project in November 2016. Is it clear enough? Screen, it's here. And in this time, we added these features. So we added closed groups. We added that you can add images to posts, which was created there. HTML emails and overview of lives. A lot of features were added. And we're now at this time, and we also see a lot of features on the roadmap. Different teams are working on it, improving the homepage, embedding feeds, multimedia, like digest emails currently released. I think it's there. But, yeah, a lot of features are being added, and we want to add more features. It has to be alive, it has to grow. Private message important, public goods is grow. And we have a lot more to go. We have a session every month where we discuss the coming roadmap for the next month, 3 months, and it's always added with improvements, new features. The project is alive. So we have this old project, this Youth for Peace project in the beginning. How do we maintain it? Yeah, there should be no description, of course. It should be secure. There should not be any leaks or known security issues on the platform. So it's not about this. Yeah, we do this, of course, but it's not really the effort to do. It is about supporting upgrades to newer version with new features, which we know will benefit the platform. And if you look at the project process from a project point of view, you create it once, then you're basically done with it. You have maybe a maintenance contract, and if the customer wants more, you say, oh, let's do another sprint, and we can build the extra functionality. And we actually think this is not the best way forward. So we think it's better to sell it not as a project with a start and an end, but more as a product based. And we actually offer this. So we say new features are included automatically, and they pay a higher fee for this. And this is also something we want to do. We want to have an up-to-date platform because it will help the community grow. And if the community grows, they will also stay with us and also want to have new features in the future. So it's a good business case. But it's also a good developer case. It's not good. It's not fun to work on a 5-year-old project which hasn't been updated with new features. Drupal 6 project, for example. Did anybody work with this such project before? Hands? Was it fun? No. No. So it's not. But if you keep it up to date and you keep it active, you keep adding new features. That will be reusable. You don't have to change the whole project or create a new version. So it will be better overall. The next thing, we are actually planning to upsell some premium features. Think of a big analytics where you can store extra data and visualize it. So these services where we do community consultancy. So actually having these business models in mind where we want to say, these are extra services or extra features we can provide, which cannot be in a standard package because you need infrastructure, you need resources for it. And if you have an outdated community with outdated features, you have to maintain like these old versions, which makes it a lot more complicated. And we think there will be higher engagement of the Drupal community. So if you see this already, we have this model with SaaS, we have this model with product. Features are keeping fixed point. So we're also expecting the community to move around this and to help us making it better. So we want to do this, that's clear. Also some edge cases, if you have a dedicated team for years on a project, which does the updates, and then you probably don't need this. But for most projects, I think yeah, we have a lot of these features, and not all of them apply for your community. So we have to, for example, a closed group example, we have this public dialogues project, which is only public closed groups. Public, it only has public consultations, so it's available for everyone. And they don't have a use case for closed groups, they don't want this. It's more a discussion platform than a community, so it makes sense not to enable this feature for them. And it's, yeah, the current customizations we do, we have to provide some backwards compatibility, we have to support an upgrade path, but it's difficult, like if we're going to change the whole thing, do we still want to apply backwards compatibility? We can't. You can just take it and do anything you want with it. So there is some sort of gray area where we say, yeah, we can do it, but should we do this or not? Another thing is timing, planning, and releases. So it's a lot of work for us to do these upgrades at the moment. And it's not always clear when to do this and how to communicate this with the customer. If it's not ready, they see a release coming live. We want to have it next day, for example. So we have to put resources in it. So I'm going a bit, maybe some time. So I'm going to show some examples where we run into. Did anybody work with OpenSocial before? Some hands? On what version?
Was it the RC1 when we started?
Is it still live? Oh yeah, yours live.
No,
we're
updating now to 1.4, I guess.
Okay. And you? Sorry?
It's Drupal Europe.
Okay.
It's still
live. On what version?
The latest one, I guess.
The latest. You? Oh, yes. So yeah. So it's not relevant to everybody, but it's also to give an example of things that are wrong with updates. So to give a little bit of context, all our enterprise projects have a custom look and feel, which goes beyond the normal theme. There is a base theme and a social blue theme in the distribution, and we all have this custom theme that replaces the social blue theme. So we still use the base theme, but we don't use the social blue theme. And most of our enterprise projects have custom group types. Groups are a collection of access and business rules, and it's mostly the first thing we adjust to modify a platform to the customer's needs. So it's something to keep in mind. So this is an example, the HTML emails. I think it's a great feature. Normal Drupal emails look like this. It's not really, I'm going to log in now and go to this platform. And now they look at like this, so it's a bit clear enough. There's a background here and a logo and some styling. You can add some boldness. This is selection, so it's not there normally. Yeah, that's something we generally want in every platform. But it didn't work out of the box. We had this update, and we actually spent 3 days with 2 developers to fix this issue. And was this commit actually for the 4th project? We did it quite fast. We know which files to change, but there was a settings in YAML. They had some configuration which was in there way before this feature arrived, but it wasn't really used before. You could do without it. With the Scholar scheme, it was all in the social blue theme, so the normal thing worked out of the box. But for our custom themes, it broke. And the release notes were also not very clear in this regard, like these files you need. So we had to really figure out each file, really dive into the code, spend a lot of time and fix it. So if you're having problems with HTML emails, you can look at the social base team and look at these files, and then it should work. That's one example. This is another example. It didn't really add the feature, but we converted our whole social base team with Bootstrap plugins. It was a lot of pre-processed did, hook did, It was ugly, it was not clean. So we made it clean. And this was the release notes. It's issue confirmed that Bootstrap, you read this, you think, oh, good idea. But it actually broke a lot of our sites. So the pre-processing things in our custom teams had to be converted to these Bootstrap plugins. And I think there was also a change in the borders. If you see here, there's 64 files changed. So it was a big commit, a lot of lines. A lot of change we had to also apply to our social custom teams. This is another example, the images on post. Actually worked out of the box, worked great. So you can add an image to a post. But it creates a new bundle. So you have these entities, you can add bundles to them. So there was a post bundle, and now there is a photo bundle, I think. Sure. Yeah, photo bundle in post. I'm not quite sure if I agree with the architects here, but we had a feature that gives admin notifications. So content manager in the platform that was for a custom project. They wanted to have a notification if anything happens on the platform, so they can react to it. But they said, yeah, we don't see any notifications for these new posts. And basically we had to add it, but it seems easy now, just add a bundle. But yeah, we could have made this more generic, or at least if we were aware that these features are connected, we could have spotted this sooner. So it was on production and it didn't work. Notification. This, I think, something how it was very, very well done by the other team. So this is an important notice. You will read this if you see this. And they changed something in Composer, so it's also in the team again. That's the area that needs the most changes. But yeah, we have documentation now. We have a blog article that explains why we need this change. It breaks backwards compatibility if you use custom theme as well. Blog article, you have to add now these packages to the Composer file, and documentation how to do this. So we didn't apply this update yet for our sites, but we think it won't be that much big of an issue because we have this documentation. How can we improve this? How can we make the distribution more suitable for the enterprise and for the partners and agencies that work with OpenSocial? Yeah, we think one issue is that the releases are a bit ad hoc. So we have a release every 2-4 weeks, depending on how the sprint goes. And sometimes there are features added, sometimes there are not, sometimes only bug fixes. So it's not really clear when you have to check things. So we think like a release path that Drupal core has. They work 6 months on a feature, fixed amount, and then they release things. Of course, you can still change minor bug fixes and minor issues. But like for the bigger features you would add, if you want to add something now, it's in 8.5 as soonest. So we think, yeah, 6 months is a bit too long, but maybe if we change the period to a few months, at least we have a clear path. Oh, now is the time to look at this and to work on it. I think that will be a big improvement. It's still ID, so I cannot promise this will happen, but we are discussing this internally. Another thing is we're thinking about setting up a community in OpenSocial, of course, for people that work with OpenSocial, but more professionally. So agencies, developers, freelancers that have a website on OpenSocial, where we can also share these IDs. I can also post this in Drupal.org, but it will get lost in the support issues. But if you can search it, if you can connect, engage with this content, you can also make the threshold lower to help others and to help the community that struggles with these things. And it will be documented, so people that encounter the issue can search on it and see, oh, people had this issue, oh, I have to change these files. So that is a big improvement as well. We think that can help also, but this also for the maintenance, but also for creating new features. As an example, closed group was created 3 times that we are aware of. We created it ourselves. I think Quanta created the version, and Genero created a closed group version. So it's sort of a wasted effort there. Maybe we did all separate things and we can combine it into one perfect module, but the most likely scenario is that we create sort of the same thing, which works the same thing. And yeah, we think if we can collaborate these efforts, what features we're working on, what are the ideas behind this feature, we can also make our resources spend more wisely to improving the whole thing. So that's also something we want to do with this community. And using contrib and experimental modules. We have to acknowledge, like, not everything we do is ready for production, but sometimes it's not. Yeah, it's still useful. For example, we have this PWA module, and what's the
Progressive web apps.
Progressive web apps. So you can have notifications in your browser, and you can create an app on your mobile and get notifications there. It's very cool technology, but yeah, we had only time for proof of concept, and it was a bit lower on the roadmap. We can still demo it to customers and say we have this priority for us. But if people that do want to work on this have an interest, it's also cool to work on this in your own time. Maybe publish this to a contrib space and maybe add here you can do this. These are our ideas. You can improve this in this way, where we can actually get some engagement about these features. And inheritance of Drupal distributions. It should be in 8.4, but it wasn't, I think. So it's now on the roadmap for 8.5 in Drupal core, where you can say this distribution has the base or the parent of this distribution. So there is a big difference between the internet and a volunteer community, and we have to acknowledge this. And potentially, those could be distributions. I'll have a picture of this later. These are all the custom modules we created. And that's quite a lot. So it's all these features that we, and they are currently not open, so you can try to search them, but you won't find them yet. But we're actually planning or discussing, should we publish it online? It's not really useful at the moment. It works for these projects. It works maybe for some are better than the other. We have this Google Translate, which actually used in 3 projects now, so we think it's pretty stable. But we still think like we can publish this, we can tell a little bit more about this, and hope that other people will do this as well, and actually use these modules, not just publish the code, but actually set your composer so you use these custom modules and not have them in a custom folder somewhere. I think that can really help other people as well and create community around certain features. So this is about nested distribution. So you could think of like a core open source, which has everything all communities need. So an activity stream, groups, that sort of functionality. Let's say everything every community needs. You also think like, yeah, you really have the communities, or you have the intranets where it's more professional based, or you can have like more discussion, forum based platforms. And you can also create a distribution about that and add features to that. And it doesn't mean that we as a company, GoGorilla, should maintain all of this. So it will probably be way too much as well. So we can also think about people that do really in this area a lot of work. They can be the maintainers of these distributions. And also there's difference maybe further nested down in non-profits, for example, we do with Greenpeace, and more the support that people help each other as answer questions sort of communities. So it could go theoretically like unlimited. Yeah, this is groups. This is some ideas we have, which we actually work on. So we have a lot of these custom group types, and they're not really integrated that well in the default group types. So we basically build everything. If you make a feature, we probably make it in a group. So we have courses, we have discussions, they are all group types. And we think of a way to make this more flexible, that you have more like components in a group where you can, for example, request group membership, that sort of features. But also visibility. And this is actually linked to a Drupal issue, which works on implementing access policies, which is a bit not going into detail now, but this will make it possible that you can say you have policies attached to this group type, and it will basically just work without any code. So you can say this group type, people that have a certain role in the company or a certain feature, age, and it doesn't require any code, so you can just basically support it with backwards compatibility. Yeah, I have to hurry up a little bit. Or enterprise workflows, so we use Composer. And it means basically that the Drupal modules and Drupal core and Open Social is not in the Git repository. So we have everything, so you can just see the feature. We use patches a lot. There's one trick that you might want to know about is in GitHub, we do a lot of pull requests there. And you can do .patch or .diff. And you can actually have the patch ready without having to go to Drupal.org and upload it. So it's mainly useful when you actually have an active development project. Composer replace, if you have to do security update, there are strict dependencies in Composer. So you can say I'm using Drupal 8.3.4, and there's a security issue in 8.3.5. And Open Social will be updated fairly quick, in like an hour or two, so we're pretty strict on that. If you're on an older version of Open Social, you have to update the complete of Open Social, and you cannot do this in a few hours. You will run into some issues potentially. And you can just say Drupal, replace Drupal with 8.36. That's some tricks you can do. Yeah, tests. We have actually a BA test suite in the distribution containing like full coverage of the distribution, so all the features in there. And we can run those for the enterprise sites as well. And we do this. So we have here is an example of configuration where we say run all of these tests in these files, but don't run these tests about closed groups, which we didn't enable and don't want to test. And we also have enterprise testers, of course, that we add, and it's all integrated into shippable in this case. So it's a bit more tricky than the open source variant, because you have to pay for it, but you can still do it and have this feedback. If you create a pull request, you see the test results. Configuration management. So this is our workflow at the moment. We're not really proud of it yet, but it works. So we do an updated bay, we do a drush, we do a feature revert of the social bundle, so that's the distribution bundle. We enable some modules, which we only should do once, but it doesn't hurt to do it more times than once. And we do a feature revert of the enterprise bundle. So we basically use features, and there are some this is a platform.sh file, so we also sanitize environments that are not the master environment. So we use custom features, similar as in Drupal 7. And this mainly for the reason it's not how you should do it, but we want to have these features applied automatically. We don't want to figure out like should we apply it or not. So basically we say, yeah, everything in code, everything that's in a feature, we will do it and we will override our custom things and it will work. And this has some, this is an example where you can say, I have this configuration and I want to add something to it or change something. So you can do it actually already in code where you say, I have this configuration file. This is to change the order of comments. So it's from descending to ascending. You can do it like this. But there are a lot of issues with this. Mainly that it doesn't work with the Drupal 8 configuration flow, where you do these imports and these exports in one file, where you can also see the change and more easily. And change in the UI do not persist always. So not persist like all the blocks do work, for example. If you're going to change fields in a content type and you do a feature revert, just gone. So the code is leading. It's also not how Drupal 8 wants you to do it. It's not always clear what an update does to your configuration. So you see like these refer to this and you can look into it, but most of the time you just see it if you have a problem. But it could actually change important things. And these config override, which I showed you, actually not very consistent in the UI. So if you go to something, you don't see it. So you see the old version, but actually how it works is applied. So that sort of issues you run into as well with this method. And there's a list of other reasons. And this is from the feature maintainer. He actually is not using features for 4 months now, the module. So they say, stop using it. But the actually adoption rate is way different. So it went from 3% adoption of all the sites in Drupal 8 to 8%. So actually, this is an important thing if you're using Drupal 8. You should consider stop using features. So we are. So yeah, the Drupal 8 configuration is there for a reason, and how it works is not that bad. So you can split it in YAML files. It's normal version control. There are a lot of these reasons. And is it really that necessary to have these features in these separate modules? No, probably not. It's fine if it's in one place. You have a good overview of everything. One module is configuration split. It basically means you have this whole package of all the configuration, but these are the production settings, and these are the settings you should use in development. So it's a way to separate configuration by environment. And config templates, these are modules created also by the feature maintainer. I will show that some later, but you can reuse config, you can reapply them to certain things, and actions that actually use these templates to change the config. Is this readable? Not right. So this is a normal example of configuration file where you have these config. So you have field storage, project image, node type, project block. It's pretty static. You do want to change it maybe, but you can't really. So you have to adopt the machine names of the distribution. So we use them now, but it's not really flexible. So what they say, hey, take this configuration and make it flexible. So instead of the configuration itself, it's now a template where you have these field names, bundles, and then we can do this with open source. We can have these features that are flexible. Then you have to implement them with config actions. So you basically say, I'm using this template, I'm putting this data in there, and I want to have the destination list. So some actions where you can actually implement the feature in your own site. And this allows also for easy overrides. Yeah, I want to have this field template, but yeah, for me it should be required, or my name should be different, or the description should be this. So we're very excited about these technologies, and we think it's the way forward. We still like the way feature does that you have these configurations, that there is a path to update automatically, but you can also do it like this, more structured, and you can also apply them more than once. But it's still very early phase, so we're not actually sure when to switch, but we will test them out. To wrap up, so you can upgrade OpenSocial, but don't expect it to go automatically if you have a very custom website. There is some experience in the community, so we are pretty approachable on Slack, on the issue queue, so you can ask us. And we will try to help you, but don't expect it to work out of the box yet. Yeah, we do want to move where we don't compete to a system where we don't compete with each other on these projects. That we are going to hide, for example, the course module because it will give us a competitive advantage. I think that goes a bit against the thing we do with open source in general, and especially the philosophy with this project. So we try to share more things we do on enterprise, and we're also hoping that we'll inspire others to share and to put more on to contribute and to participate in this community when we have it. And the workflow with features is okay, but config actions is, I think, a necessary step to make it much better, to make actually Drupal 8 useful for distribution configuration. That's it for me. Questions? Yeah.
How much trouble do you have with configurations that you're trying to ship? Have people already changed themselves, or will have conflicting values?
Yeah, basically we don't allow the customer to do any changes that we don't want them to do. So it will, yeah, we are pretty strict on what they can change. So we don't open these profiles, we don't open these group types. We do open the blocks, so we also put them away from the configuration. It's all in code. But that's a bit the solution we take, and everything that's in code we control and we know and we can check it.
But also the other companies that implement open social distributions, they have the power to change things that you change yourself.
Yeah, but this is also not a workflow people have to do. So you can still go take the original one, use it as a starter kit, and do the config export, config import. But then you have quite a bit of work to apply these upgrades, these new features.
There are some manual steps to merge these configurations.
Yeah, but also if you have them install, I think they're not applied at all. So you have to think about the path to apply them. Yeah, it's difficult. You will have more trouble like figuring out what are the new features. But maybe it's a better way for these.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just wanted to.
Yeah, it also adds like a different level of complexity if you change the UI. Basically, you're saying the configuration on production is leading. So if you want to do an update, you also have to get the configuration first before you do an update. So you have to check like merge it, and there's a timing question like you have to check for the still before you if it's still updated or not. So that sort of complexity, which is not figured out. There are some talks about this to do this, but it's also not as easy as export import.
Yes. Do you think about an upgrade path for features to do configuration management, or should it just work?
It's interesting. We're not that far, to be honest.
But look at like what are the possibilities and what are the limitations. So what you said, like the thing with configuration management is at the time we were starting with distribution was that production is leading. So you have this whole flow where you first have to get your SQL file on your local machine, and we have sometimes teams of 10 to 20 people working. Okay, so, you don't want that, and that was the reason we didn't implement configuration management at the start.
Fantastic.
But you know, like even though we choose to use features to structurize everything in our distribution, you can still do this yourself. If you want to use configuration management, why not? You just get the production database, import it locally, and then you do an export. You import it from your production. You can do this as an agency.
But yeah, I think we should, if we switch, because now we also communicate this way of doing it on the product or documentation. So we really have to think about this change and why we should make it. It should be, I think it should be supported at least. Maybe not in an automated way, but at least in a documented way.
What's like the silliest feature request you got from your enterprise? I know that.
Well, I think it's more like solution based. So, for example, we have these teasers and these customers that really want to control the design. So we have a portal that has SDGs, which are Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 16 of them. They're pretty recognizable icons, but they wanted to have this very small text in the teaser. And there were a lot of discussions trying to convince them it's not the best way because you cannot read it. But actually it's in there. So it's an ongoing process to convince them it's not the best way to do it. But it's a bit of a special case. So they have like their own product based on open source. But for normal, we go ahead and discuss. And it's also something we have to do. So we cannot say, oh, this is your opinion. So we say, oh, this is the product. This is the reason why we have an activity stream or a group. So we have these discussions, like trying to fit their needs.
And we don't have like a unlimited budget. So we are bootstrapped. So we come from an agency model, and we are kind of working now on this distribution. But it's all our own money. We crowdsource some of it, but not enough. So, like when a client asks for a feature, we say, okay, is it useful for our distribution? Could it be useful for other clients as well? Can we combine efforts? Can they pay for a feature together? So yes, ideally you would have these type of clients. But yes, you have to do stuff.
Yeah.
To keep them happy. But we're all used to it.
It's also about experimenting. So we're not afraid to change the whole workflow for some projects just to learn something. It doesn't work out yet. It's their fault maybe, but so we also use these enterprise projects as experimentation, like what works, what doesn't. Other questions? Yeah.
How much time do you spend on upgrade paths regarding to development? Like, is that still in balance, or is the maintenance burden of the upgrade paths and the backwards compatibility slowly becoming more heavy? Maybe.
Yeah, we basically don't support that much of an upgrade path yet, so only for the features in the distribution, and you know what they are, so you can just do an upgrade, but we run into issues with the maintenance team that, for example, this path doesn't work for us, or we run into issues. So I do see a learning path here where we actually are improving and learning how to write these update paths better. I think that's also, we have these separate teams, but we try to learn from each other, and if we have really some issues that cannot be repeated, that we should avoid in the future, then we actually make a big effort of it to talk to the people that created it. Like, hey, the issue broke it this way and for these reasons, for this enterprise side. So I think that's an ongoing process that we learn how to do this better. But yeah, it still takes a lot of time. I think in percentage it's difficult to say. It also depends, of course, on how custom the platform is. So not all these enterprise projects have the same amount of time. See, this multi-language issue of a site, for example, has a lot of issues because it's the first multi-language site we built. For example, does it work well with the activity stream, and does it work well with these things? It actually takes a lot of effort to fix, and we're trying to push it down.
But at least the SaaS team has to maintain like perfect upgrade path with no errors, right?
Yeah.
So
but they don't do this. I'm not really involved in SaaS that much, so maybe Jaap can.
No, yeah, true, and but like of course, but also for enterprise, yes, it takes a lot of time to we learn every day, and the beauty of it is like we have 10 or 15 enterprise clients all running local social, so it's different from our old agency model where you had like this business-to-business site and the e-commerce shop, you know. Basically, we solve an issue and you spend like two developers 3 days on the HTML email. Yeah, of course it sucks, but like the next client is a lot faster. So that's the advantage.
Yeah. So the more customers we have, the more resources as well. Yes.
You show that you have VHAT tests for both the distribution and for enterprise clients. Does that help you to catch issues with upgrades before?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so basically if something breaks, we see it quite quickly. It's not full coverage, so we only focus on the most critical features and changes that they paid for example. But yeah, we do see these tests breaking, and then we know there's an issue. And we are trying to expand this as well to more like visual tests. Because, yeah, to be honest, a lot of things break in the teaming, and sometimes the corners are not round anymore, that sort of things. So it's still needed to test this, and sometimes, yeah, I don't see these problems as a developer. So it's sometimes, yeah, it's also something we have to think about to capture these sort of visual changes. But we do this with these beta tests, but we can also expand this with visual regression.
Yeah, beta test, like for update path, we first install 1.0 and then we update to the latest version, and then we run the same test. Basically, and yeah, if it fails, then you know the developer made a mistake and it will not be.
Yeah, also with installation, so every project should not be no legacy where you have to download the database.
But there's still things you miss. So what? Where's that gap? Where can you improve this?
Yeah, we have an acceptance environment, and we also inform our customers like this update is live. These are the new features. Please test them. But we will not ask for their approval. That they have to say check and then do production. So it is like if you don't hear anything, then we will merge it to production later. But there is of course a path if it's on production and there are issues, we still are spot on and trying to fix them as soon as possible. But yeah, it's mostly these visual things, and so the most functional things are covered with these tests. HTML emails, for example, is a difficult one because we don't really have email testing covered yet. Distribution. So there's some technologies we probably could invest more time to also automate this.
How do you handle addition of new features? For instance, a feature could introduce a new button in the interface somewhere. Do you enable it by default, or do you consult with the client if he wants it enabled? How do you handle that sort of things?
Yeah, for small things, we mostly leave it to the other team. If they think it's important enough to enable it, we also say, okay, it's a rational decision. We're not questioning this. We're enabling it. But for like bigger things like closed group, we first try to make a mental map ourselves of the project. Is it needed? What do we advise? And if we're really unsure about the best approach, then we will ask the customer. But in most of these cases, it also takes quite a bit of extra work to implement this. If that is the case, we probably will try to upsell it. Saying, yeah, your platform is not compatible with this feature, but we can change it a little bit. But then they have to actually put some money on the table. Other questions? No.
Thank you very much, Niels, for having a little present. Thank you. Just need to say thank you for coming. The next text talk is already planned. You can organize tech talks. Most of the time we didn't know when the next was. The next will be on December 14th at Burst in Rotterdam. We're still looking for speakers, so if you have a subject or if you have a talk you want to do, talk to me. There's also a Google Doc where you can put in your location if you want to host or an idea for a talk. I will put a link to the Google Doc in the comments of this meetup on meetup.com, and I will also send it out on Twitter, on the Drupal Tech Talk Twitter account. So if you have an idea, put it in the Google Doc or email it to me, peter@triquato.nl. So that was it. Thank you for coming, and I think we can have a one more thing.
So while I still have your attention, Niels and Mark, thank you very much for giving the talk. It was very interesting. Peter, thank you for helping us organize this. I think it's very fun. You guys all came. We're thinking about organizing a sprint anytime soon. If anyone has any good ideas about any module that needs attention,
Media.
You still my fingers.
Please tell me, maybe we can figure something out together. You can still hang around for a drink or pick you up.